Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. The Manhattan skyline sparkled as twilight descended, casting soft golden reflections across the city's glass towers. In the heart of Tribeca, a luxury penthouse rose above everything, silent, pristine, and cold. Tariq al-Said stood by the vast floor-to-ceiling windows, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. He held a crystal glass in one hand, water untouched, while the other rested loosely in the pocket of his tailored slacks. From this height, the city appeared as a living organism, pulsing, breathing, dreaming, but it wasn't his. Tariq could build empires and buy skylines, but this city, it never truly belonged to him. Just like the life he had once tasted and lost, at 35, he had everything a man was supposed to want: power, influence, a name that opened doors from Manhattan to Monaco. The Al-Said were royalty in the Arab world, not by crown, but by wealth, bloodline, and quiet control. Oil had started it, real estate had multiplied it, innovation had cemented it, and Tariq was their crown jewel. But as the sun dipped lower, painting streaks of amber and violet across the sky, a familiar ache returned to his chest. Loneliness didn't always roar. Sometimes it came softly, in the clink of ice against glass, in the echo of your own footsteps on marble floors, in the realization that no one would ask how your day had been. No one, because you built a life that didn't allow them in. He walked through the living room, sleek, curated, impersonal, and into the kitchen. Every surface gleamed. Every appliance was touch-activated. A chef came twice a day, but Tariq stood still, staring at the countertop, heart-heavy with a memory that had slipped through the cracks of time and privilege. Nora. The name was a whisper in his mind, but it hit like thunder. Nora Bennett. She had never belonged to his world. She was the daughter of their estate's gardener, bright, curious, stubborn, utterly unafraid of him. She was 17 when he first saw her, curled under an olive tree, reading a book on architecture with a pencil tucked behind her ear. He had been 20, angry at his life, at his family, at the expectations tattooed into his soul, and somehow, in her smile, he had found oxygen. They loved in secret, in the shadows of marble halls, and in whispered conversations between rose bushes. It was pure. It was reckless. It was doomed. When his father found out, there was no confrontation, just swift, brutal silence. Nora's father was dismissed. Her family was forced to leave overnight. Tariq was sent back to Dubai under the threat of disgrace. Every attempt he made to find her afterward was blocked. Letters returned, calls unanswered, his grief buried under duty. For 20 years, he had carried that wound like a scar beneath expensive suits and measured words. He had seen the world, sat with royalty, shaped futures, but never healed. And now, 2 decades later, that wound was throbbing again. He sighed, placing the glass down. The room was too quiet, the silence too loud. He opened his phone, scrolling without purpose, until his fingers stopped on something he hadn't touched in years. A food delivery app. It was impulsive, absurd, really, but something inside him, the boy he once was, whispered, "Do it." He selected the simplest option. Pizza, margarita, just cheese, basil, tomato. A taste of the past. He added a note. No contact delivery. Ring once. He hesitated, then deleted the note. Let it be real. He paced for a moment, then returned to the window. The sun was nearly gone. Dusk cloaked the city in soft navy and gold. He closed his eyes and remembered her laugh. Sharp, unfiltered, always one breath too loud for his world. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Al-Said, your delivery is on the way up," the doorman announced. He responded with a quiet thank you, though his heart had begun to beat faster. Ridiculous. It was just pizza. But deep down, it wasn't. It was defiance, memory, longing. It was a hunger he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. A soft knock. He walked to the door and opened it. What he saw made the air catch in his lungs. She stood there, holding the box in both hands, wearing a faded green jacket and a red baseball cap. Her eyes, wide, storm gray, unmistakable, met his, and in that instant, the world tilted. "Nora." She froze, just for a heartbeat. Then her expression closed. She looked away, extended the box like it was any other delivery, and whispered, "Pizza for Al-Said." He took it without speaking, fingers brushing hers for a second too long. Neither moved, neither breathed. "Thank you," he managed, voice rougher than he expected. She nodded once, stepped back, and left. Just like that, the door closed. But the past, it had kicked it wide open. The elevator doors closed behind her, trapping Nora Bennett in a mirrored box, filled with silence and the faint scent of cologne that still lingered from the penthouse above. Her hands trembled as she clutched the insulated pizza bag tightly to her chest, even though it was now empty. She didn't look at her reflection. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what her face would show. Shock, disbelief, the wild echo of 20 years collapsing into a single glance. Tariq. She hadn't spoken his name in over a decade, hadn't allowed herself to think about the way he used to smile, shy, as though no one else in the world had ever made him laugh. She hadn't let herself remember the warmth of his hands, the late-night whispers beneath desert stars, or the way he had once promised. "No matter what happens, I'll find you." But he hadn't, not until tonight, and she had walked away without a word. The elevator dinged softly. She stepped into the lobby like a ghost, nodding politely at the doorman who offered a distracted smile. The cold air outside slapped her cheeks, but it couldn't clear the heat rising in her chest. It wasn't just shock. It was pain, anger, and a strange, dangerous flicker of something she thought she'd buried long ago. She crossed the street quickly, slipping into her rusted Honda Civic, and pulled the door shut behind her. The streetlights cast long shadows across the dashboard. Her phone buzzed with a new delivery order, but she ignored it. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel, clinging to it like it was the only thing keeping her from unraveling. Tariq Al-Said, here in New York, as powerful and breathtaking as she remembered, but he was supposed to be gone forever, swept away by a world that had always rejected her. 20 years ago, they were two kids wrapped in a forbidden love. He, the heir to a Middle Eastern dynasty. She, the daughter of the hired help. She had been just 17, working part-time after school in the palace gardens, collecting clippings and watering roses. And he had found her there more than once, pretending not to watch her. Their first kiss had happened beneath the jacaranda tree. Their last kiss had happened the night before. Her world collapsed. She had never known exactly what led to the sudden destruction. One day, everything was golden. The next, her father was packing their lives into the back of a truck, his face hard with shame. Her mother cried silently, and Nora never got the truth, only warnings to never speak of it again. She had written Tariq letters, dozens, everyone returned, unopened. After a while, she stopped trying. Life had pulled her under, hard and fast. Her dream of studying architecture vanished with the weight of unpaid bills and a sick mother. Then came Ethan, her miracle and her anchor, born from a fleeting relationship that ended as quickly as it began. She had been raising him alone ever since, and now fate had tossed her back into the orbit of the only man who had ever made her believe in forever. She laughed bitterly, the sound low and hollow inside the car. Of course, it would happen like this. When she was wearing an old cap, no makeup, delivering a pizza, because her day job as a receptionist barely paid enough to cover rent and medications, he had opened the door looking like a dream carved from memory. Sharp suit, hair slicked back, eyes still that same intense dark gold, and for a moment, she had forgotten everything. Time, distance, pain. But then she had remembered and walked away. Because what could possibly come of it now? She started the car. Back in the penthouse, Tariq stood motionless by the door, the untouched pizza box on the counter behind him. He hadn't moved since she left. Her voice, barely above a whisper, still rang in his ears. "Pizza for Al." Said, not Tariq. Not, "Is it really you?" Not, "How could you?" Just a job, a delivery, a stranger. But her eyes had betrayed her. They had widened for a second, full of recognition, before she'd quickly looked away, and that was all it had taken. The air in the room had changed. The past had cracked open, flooding the space with things he had tried to forget. He walked to the window again, pressing his fingers against the cool glass. Nora. Her name tasted the same, like longing and fire. He hadn't known where she had gone after the scandal. His family had silenced everything, swept it all away, like it had never happened. He had fought, once. He had tried to reach her, to call, to write, but after months of being stonewalled, punished, and sent overseas, he had given up. He thought she'd moved on, lived a happy life, married someone who could love her in peace. But now he knew the truth. She was here, in New York, delivering food in the evenings, working herself to the bone, his hands clenched. Why? Why hadn't life been kinder to her? The thought of her struggling while he had built empires made something inside him twist violently. He had everything, yet she had slipped through his fingers like sand. He turned away from the window and paced the room, restless, agitated. There were too many questions. Where had she gone after her father was fired? Why hadn't she answered the few calls he managed to make? Had she hated him all these years? And most of all, was there still something between them? That was the question he feared the most, because when their eyes met, even briefly, he hadn't just seen recognition. He had seen pain, and beneath it, the ghost of something else. A flicker, a spark, a beginning buried beneath 20 years of silence. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if she'd ever speak to him again. But one thing was certain. Fate had reopened a door he thought was sealed shut, and Tariq al-Said wasn't going to let it close again. Not without trying. Not this time. Sleep didn't come. The city glowed beneath the penthouse windows like a sea of stars turned upside down, but Tariq al-Said didn't see it. He sat on the edge of his bed, shirt unbuttoned, collar open, his tie forgotten somewhere on the marble floor. His elbows rested on his knees, and his hands were locked together in front of him, still tense, haunted. Nora Bennett. He whispered her name like a prayer, or maybe a sin. 2 decades had passed. 20 years of boardrooms, negotiations, private jets, wealth beyond reason. None of it had erased her. She had been buried, yes, but not forgotten. Not truly. Her memory was like a scar beneath tailored suits, hidden, but always there. And now that scar was bleeding. He tilted his head back, staring at the ceiling as memories flooded in, fierce, uninvited, and uncontrollable. He was 19 again, wild, angry, trapped in a life scripted by tradition. His days were scheduled, his friends chosen for him, his future already carved in stone. Until her, Nora, the daughter of the palace gardener, she was light where his world was heavy. Laughter in the midst of pressure. She challenged him. She mocked his titles. She wasn't impressed by the cars, the villas, the endless rows of staff. She had smiled at him like he was just a boy. The first time he kissed her, it wasn't planned. They had been walking near the greenhouse, talking about cities they dreamed of visiting. She spoke of Rome and its architecture. He spoke of New York and its chaos. Then she looked at him with those fearless gray eyes and said, "You don't even know what freedom feels like, do you?" He didn't answer. He kissed her instead. It was awkward, desperate, honest, and it ruined everything. From that moment, they became reckless. Secret meetings in quiet corners of the estate, notes hidden beneath flower pots, whispered laughter behind closed doors. For 6 months, they lived a fairy tale, one not meant for this world. Then came the storm. One morning, he was summoned. His father's expression was colder than marble, his voice sharp as steel. "You will never see that girl again." And just like that, the dream shattered. Nora's father was dismissed by nightfall. No explanation, no warning, no chance to say goodbye. Tariq had tried. God, he had tried. He called, wrote letters, sent someone to the town where her family had moved, but the answers never came. Then his family retaliated. They froze his accounts, cut his freedom, threatened to destroy her family's life completely if he didn't comply. One uncle even hinted that Nora's safety could be compromised. So he stopped. He flew back to Dubai under the weight of failure and shame, swearing he would never allow his emotions to be used as a weapon again. He built walls around his name, around his heart. But tonight, with her standing in his doorway, holding a pizza box with trembling fingers, those walls cracked. What had her life been like after that? Who did she become? Who did she have to become? She looked tired, strong, alone, and those eyes, they hadn't changed. He closed his own now, imagining her somewhere across the city, maybe lying awake as well, staring at her ceiling, just as haunted by the past as he was. Did she hate him? Did she blame him? Or was there still a part of her that remembered what they once were? A soft chime echoed through the room. A notification from his tablet. He tapped it. It was a media update, a photo of him earlier that day, snapped by paparazzi at a conference. His face was calm in the picture, controlled. The caption read, "Tariq Al-Said, New York's invisible billionaire, returns." He looked at it blankly. The world saw a man who had it all. But tonight, he felt like the boy who lost everything. A thought crossed his mind, one he hadn't dared to entertain in years. What if he tried again? What if, this time, he didn't let her go? But what would that mean? To step back into her life after so long, to ask questions he might not be ready to hear the answers to. And, worst of all, to discover that she had moved on. He rose from the bed slowly, walking barefoot to a drawer. Inside, beneath documents and papers untouched for years, he found it. A small folded photo, faded, creased at the edges. Nora, barefoot in a summer dress, laughing beside a fountain on the palace grounds. He had taken it himself. She didn't know he'd kept it. He hadn't looked at it in a long time. But now, the image shook him. Because it wasn't just nostalgia, it was regret, longing, and something deeper. Hope. Across the city, in a cramped apartment above a bodega in Brooklyn, Nora lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Her mother's oxygen machine hummed softly beside her. Ethan's bedroom door was closed down the hall. But her thoughts were stuck in that hallway. That one moment at the penthouse door. He had looked stunned, vulnerable, and entirely, terrifyingly unchanged. She hated how her heart had leapt. She hated how, for a second, she had wanted to fall into his arms and pretend the last 20 years never happened. But life wasn't a fairy tale, and she wasn't the girl beneath the jacaranda tree anymore. She was a mother, a daughter, a woman who had fought for everything she had. And yet, when their hands brushed, she felt it, the echo, the pull, the part of her that had never really stopped loving him, no matter how hard she tried. She closed her eyes tight, swallowing the tears that threatened to rise. He had been her first love. Now he was a ghost returned to life, and nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare her for what might happen next. The invitation came 2 days later, a message, short, respectful, and cautious, delivered via text. "Nora, I'd like to talk. Just talk. No expectations. Could I buy you coffee? Somewhere neutral. Just us." "Okay." She stared at the screen for almost 10 minutes before answering, "Fine." 4 p.m. Sunday, Cafe Bell on Atlantic Avenue. No emojis, no warmth. But she showed up. It was a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat, unpretentious, local, and familiar. The kind of place she used to go to in her 20s when life was still unfolding. Not closing in, she arrived 10 minutes early. It gave her time to choose the table in the back. Facing the door, she wore a navy coat, clean jeans, no makeup. She didn't want to appear as if she had tried too hard, but her pulse betrayed her. Each second ticked by like a drumbeat in her ears. At exactly 4 p.m., he walked in, and time fractured. Tariq looked completely out of place, yet somehow at ease. A charcoal overcoat, cashmere scarf, and the same quiet intensity she remembered. Heads turned subtly. He wasn't the kind of man who faded into the background, not even here, but he only saw her. He approached slowly, respectfully, no sudden moves, like he was entering sacred ground. "Nora," he said gently. Her name in his voice still did something to her. A shift inside. Sharp and soft all at once. She gestured to the seat across from her. "You're punctual. I didn't want to give you another reason to hate me." She didn't respond. A barista approached. He ordered black coffee. She had already ordered a chai latte. The awkwardness hung between them like a curtain, but it wasn't empty. It was charged, heavy with 20 years of silence. "I didn't expect to see you again," Nora said first. "Neither did I," he replied, folding his hands together, his eyes steady. "But I'm not walking away this time. Not without understanding." "Understanding what?" she asked. "Why everything happened the way it did. Why my father was fired overnight with no warning. Why we had to leave in shame while your life carried on untouched." She didn't raise her voice, but her words sliced, Tariq took the blow without flinching. I didn't know they did that to him. I swear. I found out days later. By then, it was too late. They sent me to Dubai. I tried to reach you, Nora. I wrote. I called. My family blocked everything. Nora scoffed, but her grip on the cup tightened. I thought you gave up on me, she whispered. I didn't, he said, but I was too young, too powerless, and too afraid. Their eyes locked. For a moment, they were back under the jacaranda tree. He sighed, voice raw. You were the only thing that ever felt real. You still are. The barista returned, interrupting the moment with their drinks. Nora took a long sip, trying to calm the storm inside. I thought I was over this, she admitted, but seeing you again, it brought it all back. Everything I buried. Tariq leaned forward slightly. What happened after? Nora looked away. We moved to upstate New York. My dad drank himself into silence. My mom fell sick a few years later. I got into college for architecture, but dropped out to care for them. Then Ethan came along. The mention of her son softened Tariq's features. He's brilliant, Tariq said gently. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect any of this. She raised an eyebrow. What did you expect? A happy reunion? A second chance? No, he said quietly. I just wanted to know the truth. Her voice trembled now. The truth is, I hated you for a long time, for being free, for forgetting me. I never forgot you. The silence after that was thick. Nora took another sip, then looked at him, truly looked. He seemed different, older, of course, more controlled. But there was something underneath, a tiredness, a quiet hunger for connection, not for domination, not for status, just something human. She spoke softly. Do you have a family? My mother. 2 brothers. They're still in Abu Dhabi. They want me to marry some ambassador's daughter. They've been trying to arrange it for years. And you? She asked. I've never married. Nora blinked, surprised. I couldn't, he said. No one ever came close. Those words, so simple, knocked the air out of her chest. He meant it. She knew it. And that scared her. Nora, his voice lowered. I'm not here to disrupt your life. But I need you to know something. That day at the door, when I saw you, I realized I was still lost, that no amount of money or success ever erased you. Her defenses rose again. You think it's that simple? You appear after 20 years and say those things, and I'm just supposed to let you back in? No, he said, but I'm asking if I can earn the right to try. She stared at him, searching his face for anything false. She found nothing, just a man with a past that bled into hers and a present that asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. The clock on the wall ticked. People came and went, but inside their corner of the cafe, time held its breath. Finally, she spoke, quietly but firmly. I'm not that girl anymore. I have responsibilities. A son, a sick mother. My life is not yours to step into just because you remembered me. I understand, he said. Another long pause. Then she added, but I can't deny it. Seeing you again, it shook something loose. His gaze softened. I don't know where this goes, she said, but maybe we can start with honesty. He nodded. I'll take that. They sat for a few more minutes, sipping in silence, not healed, not whole, but open for the first time in years. And just before she stood to leave, Nora glanced back at him and said something unexpected. Don't disappear again. The next time they met, it wasn't planned. It wasn't grand or dramatic. It was just human. A Saturday afternoon, the sun low and sleepy over Brooklyn. Nora was running late after her shift at the clinic where she worked part-time on weekends. Her mother needed medication, and Ethan had finished his coding club early. With no other option, she texted Tariq, a message hesitant, filled with unspoken apologies. Would you mind picking Ethan up from the community center? I'm stuck in traffic. He's done, too. The answer came immediately. Of course. I'm on my way. She hadn't expected it to feel so easy or terrifying. Tariq had never met Ethan properly, not beyond the quiet stare exchanged through a penthouse doorway. But when he arrived at the center, the boy was waiting outside on the steps, hoodie zipped to the chin, a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. He was 13, tall for his age, with Nora's jawline, and though Tariq hadn't dared admit it before, unmistakably his own eyes. Golden brown, curious, cautious. Ethan? Tariq asked gently as he approached. The boy looked up, brows furrowing. You're my mom's friend? Tariq nodded, offering a hand. Yes, I'm Tariq. She asked me to pick you up. Ethan didn't shake it. Not yet. He just stared. There was a flicker of calculation behind those young eyes, like a boy used to reading people fast, growing up too soon. Finally, he nodded. Okay, thanks, he said simply, and climbed into the passenger seat of Tariq's car. The ride was quiet at first, not awkward, just still. Ethan glanced out the window, fingers tapping a rhythm against his leg. Tariq, hands steady on the wheel, dared a question. So, you like coding? Ethan turned to him, surprised. Yeah, I'm working on a game, just for fun. Tariq's smile was subtle. What kind? A puzzle game where you have to build machines to fix broken worlds. That answer made something stir in Tariq's chest. He nodded slowly. Sounds like something we could all use. Ethan blinked. Then, to Tariq's quiet shock, he chuckled. And in that chuckle, that dry, smart, quietly amused sound, Tariq heard Nora, heard himself, heard them. He dropped Ethan off in front of their building. Nora was already home, waiting outside. As the boy climbed out, Tariq called softly, Ethan. The boy turned. I'd love to see the game someday. Ethan hesitated, then gave a shy half-nod. Maybe. Then he disappeared inside. Nora walked toward Tariq slowly, eyes questioning. Well? She asked. He smiled. He's extraordinary. She folded her arms, exhaling with a mix of pride and exhaustion. He's also guarded, like someone who's had to grow up watching me fight every battle alone. The words hit harder than she knew. Tariq looked at her, not with pity, but with something deeper. Respect, regret, a quiet ache. I'd like to spend more time with him, he said gently. If that's okay. Nora paused, uncertain. He's not a project, Tariq. He doesn't need a savior. Just consistency. Truth. I understand. You don't get to come in and play hero for a week and disappear. I'm not leaving, he said, his voice quiet but firm. And she believed him, because something in his eyes had changed. Over the next few weeks, things unfolded without ceremony. Tariq became a presence, not intrusive, but steady. He helped with pickups, joined them at the park, sat through a science fair, and cheered louder than any parent in the room when Ethan presented his solar-powered robot. At first, Ethan was cautious, guarded, but curiosity chipped away at fear. Tariq didn't try too hard. He didn't push. He asked questions, listened, shared stories about architecture and building cities, letting the boy's imagination run wild. And then, one afternoon, it happened. They were seated on the floor of Nora's small living room, going over the blueprint of a dream tree house Ethan had drawn, complete with solar panels, hidden rooms, and a library. Nora watched from the kitchen, unnoticed. Ethan looked up at Tariq and asked casually, "Did you ever want kids?" Tariq blinked. "I didn't think I'd be allowed, not in the life I was expected to live. But now," Tariq hesitated, then said, "Now I think it's the only thing that would have made all the rest of it mean something." Ethan nodded slowly. And then, in the smallest, most natural voice, he whispered, "Cool." Nora turned away, blinking back tears. Later that night, as she tucked Ethan into bed, he said, "I like him." She smoothed his hair. "Yeah, he doesn't talk to me like I'm a kid." "That's because you're not." She smiled. He turned onto his side. "Do you like him?" The question hung in the air. Nora sat quietly, then answered honestly, "I don't know. I did a long time ago, and sometimes I think I still do." Ethan yawned. "He kind of feels like a dad." Nora froze, but Ethan was already asleep. She stepped out into the hallway and leaned against the wall, heart racing. She had fought so hard to protect Ethan from fantasy, from false hopes, from the kind of heartbreak she had known all too well. But this wasn't fantasy anymore. It was unfolding, slowly, softly, and despite every fear she carried, she couldn't deny it anymore. Ethan had awakened something in Tariq, not just responsibility, something deeper, a hunger to give, not take, to protect, not control, to love. But Nora also knew love alone wouldn't be enough. Not in a world where names, bloodlines, and ancient traditions could still rip everything apart, and the past had a way of returning, not just in pizza boxes, but in the form of mothers, brothers, and ultimatums, waiting just beyond the next knock on the door. Nora hadn't expected him to show up at her job, especially not on a rainy Tuesday morning when she was rushing between phone calls, patient files, and printer jams at the Midtown clinic where she worked as a receptionist, but there he was, Tariq al-Said, towering in the small lobby, hair damp from the rain, his coat still glistening from the walk outside. People turned to stare, the air shifting around him like gravity had rearranged itself. Even the nurse at the front desk straightened her blouse and fumbled with a clipboard. Nora's heart stopped. She stepped out from behind the frosted glass divider, her voice low and tight. "You can't be here. I didn't mean to interrupt," he said gently, eyes locked on hers. I needed to see you." Her pulse spiked. "At my job? I waited until your break." She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was true. Her shift paused in 5 minutes. Still, the air between them was loaded with tension, not angry, but electric. She led him outside, down the block to a small awning where the rain drummed softly above them. She crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "Talk. I want to offer you a job," he said without preamble. Nora blinked. "Excuse me?" "A real job, not charity, not a handout. Something worthy of your mind." She narrowed her eyes. "And what exactly do you think I'm qualified to do in your billionaire empire?" His voice was steady. "You wanted to be an architect. I remember every blueprint you sketched under the jacaranda tree. I remember how your eyes lit up when you talked about redesigning orphanages, parks, city skylines that breathed instead of suffocating people." She looked away. "I own a design firm now," he continued. "Sustainable architecture. We have a project starting next month in Harlem. Affordable housing, designed by a woman from the community. You could be my personal assistant in the urban development division, flexible hours, full benefits, and I'll fund your return to school. No strings attached." Nora shook her head slowly, unsure whether to laugh or scream. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Guilt? No, because I believe in who you were and who you still are." She stared at him for a long time. He didn't flinch, didn't soften it with flattery or false promises. Just truth. "You don't get to fix the past with a job offer." "I know, but maybe I can help build something new." Nora didn't answer. That night, after Ethan went to bed and the apartment finally quieted, she sat alone at the kitchen table, Tariq's words echoing through her mind, like a melody she hadn't heard in years. Her fingers traced the edge of her empty tea mug. Could she really do it? She hadn't studied in over a decade. Her resume was a mess of survival jobs. Her confidence, that thing she once carried like fire in her chest, had long since cooled into embers. But deep inside, something stirred. A memory of a girl who used to dream about designing homes where no child ever felt small. Of a girl who wanted to change cities, not just survive them. Could she be her again? 3 days later, she met Tariq in a quiet corner of a co-working space in Soho. The space was modern but warm. All wood accents, tall plants, and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the morning light. He stood when she walked in. No suit today, just a dark sweater, slacks, and that same unreadable calm. She placed a folder on the table between them. "My resume, such as it is." He smiled. "Thank you. And I have conditions. Of course. No special treatment, no limousines, no press statements about empowering women. This stays professional. Completely. Understood. I need time off to care for my mother, and I can't be away from Ethan at night." "Done." She took a breath. "And I'm not sleeping with you." That froze him. Then, to her surprise, he smiled, genuinely, warmly. "I didn't ask you to." Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. "I just needed to say it," she whispered. "I know." He slid a small contract across the table. Short, clear, generous, no fine print, no traps. Nora read it in silence, then picked up the pen. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not safety, not even happiness, but the beginning of possibility. She was terrified of being dependent on someone else, of hoping again, of opening doors that might slam shut in her face. But for once, the voice in her head, the one that usually warned her to stay small, was quiet. The next morning, she stood in front of her closet, brushing wrinkles from a shirt she hadn't worn in years, not for comfort, not for practicality, but because it made her feel like the version of herself she wanted to be again. Ethan peeked in. "Are you going to work?" "Yeah," she said softly. "A new kind of work." He grinned. "Cool." She kissed his forehead and whispered, "We might be okay now." And for the first time, she believed it. But what she didn't see, what none of them could yet, was that this new chapter was not just about her career. It was a collision course between past and future, between what she thought she had lost and what was about to return in ways no one expected. The call came in the middle of the night. Tariq had been reviewing a site plan on his tablet, reclined in his penthouse study, when the screen lit up with a name he hadn't seen in weeks. Amina al-Said, his mother, the matriarch of the family, the quiet storm behind the empire. Revered in Abu Dhabi, feared in Dubai, and respected everywhere else, her voice had raised empires. Her silence had buried reputations. He hesitated before answering. Then, with a slow breath, he tapped the screen. "Mother, are you alone?" "Yes." There was a pause. Not hesitation. Calculation. "Then listen carefully." She never asked how he was. He waited. "I've heard things," she said, her accent clipped, regal. Every syllable sharpened by decades of influence. "You're being seen with a woman. An American." Tariq leaned back in his chair. "Is that why you called at 2 a.m.? Don't be flippant. The press hasn't gotten hold of it yet, but people are talking." "Our people." He closed his eyes. "And what exactly are they saying? That you're involved with a divorced woman, a mother, someone from below your station?" Her tone, when she said mother, was edged with disdain, as if it was synonymous with burden, damage, or disqualification. "I assume you mean Nora," he said flatly. "Don't say her name like she's one of us. She's more than most of them ever were." The silence that followed was cold and cutting. "Tariq," Amina said, in that calm, deadly tone she used when disappointment disguised itself as dignity. "You are a man of legacy. You don't build empires only to throw them at the feet of a mistake from your past. She's not a mistake. Then what is she?" He stood now, walking toward the window, the city dark and endless below. His voice lowered but didn't waver. "She's the only thing in my life that ever made me feel real." Amina's breath caught, a small, involuntary sound, quickly hidden. "I see," she said finally. Another pause. Then the mask came off. "If you continue down this path, Tariq, if you pursue this woman and attach your name to hers, you will not do so with the blessing of this family. You will not inherit the trust. You will be removed from our board in the Emirates. The succession of your stake will be reassigned." His jaw clenched. It wasn't a threat. It was a declaration. And she meant every word. "Do you understand?" she asked, cool and steady. He turned from the window, walking slowly back to his desk, then sat down again, not with defeat, but with clarity. "Yes," he said quietly, "I understand." Another long pause, as if she was waiting for him to take it back, to beg, to bend, but he didn't. When she spoke again, her voice cracked, just slightly. "You would give up your birthright for a woman who delivers pizza." He could have explained, could have said it wasn't about money, that he had his own wealth, his own identity, that what he wanted wasn't about rebellion, but about becoming whole again. But he didn't. He simply said, "I would give up everything not to lose her a second time." Silence. Then the line went dead. No goodbye. No forgiveness. No promise of reconciliation. He placed the phone face down on the table and stared at it. Then, slowly, stood again, the room feeling colder. Somehow, his heart wasn't racing, his hands weren't trembling, but something inside him had shifted permanently. A thread severed, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel owned. Later that morning, he found Nora at the office, seated in front of her screen, reviewing community proposals for a new green space initiative in Harlem. She looked focused, her brows drawn, pencil tapping lightly against the desk. "Hey," he said gently. She looked up. "Morning." He paused, then asked, "Can we talk?" She followed him into a private glass meeting room. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately, sensing it. He sat across from her, not like a boss, not like a billionaire, just a man. "My mother knows." Nora's stomach dropped. He continued, "She called last night, gave me an ultimatum. If I stay with you, I lose everything connected to my family's estate." Titles, position, inheritance. Nora blinked. And I told her I'd choose you. The silence that followed was thunderous. You did what? She whispered. I'm not letting you go again. Not for anyone. Her eyes welled. But she shook her head. Tariq, this isn't fair. You shouldn't have to. I want to. Do you understand? All my life, I've been following a script someone else wrote, and the only chapter that ever made sense was us. I lost it once. I won't lose it again. Tears slipped down her cheeks. But I'm not that girl anymore, she said. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Then let's start over as who we are now. She didn't answer right away, but she didn't pull her hand away. That afternoon, as she walked home through the fading sunlight, Nora felt a strange, powerful weight in her chest. Not fear, not sadness. Responsibility. Because this wasn't just about a man choosing her. This was about a man choosing to change everything for her. And part of her, the part still learning how to trust, wondered, could she live with that? Or could she finally allow herself to believe that she was worth being chosen? The phone rang just after midnight. Nora was in bed, wrapped in the warmth of blankets and the quiet breathing of a sleeping Ethan in the next room. Rain tapped softly against the window. The day had been long, but something in her had finally started to feel still, as if the ground beneath her wasn't about to collapse for once, until the phone shattered everything. Brooklyn General, said the voice on the other end. Miss Bennett, it's your mother. There's been a decline. The next moments unfolded in fast forward. Coat over pajamas, keys in hand, a cab hailed in the rain. Ethan left under the care of Mrs. Donnelly next door, who barely had time to ask what was wrong before Nora vanished into the dark. The hospital smelled like bleach and fear. 3rd floor, palliative wing, room 312. Her mother lay still, her skin pale against the stark white sheets, eyes fluttering open only when Nora entered. Sweetheart. Her voice was weak, barely audible. You came fast. Nora choked on the lump in her throat. Of course I did. You scared me. The older woman smiled faintly. Not the first time. Tears slipped down Nora's face as she leaned in, brushing hair back from her mother's damp forehead. Her pulse was faint beneath her fingers. They said there's not much time, Nora whispered. I know. The machines beeped softly. Somewhere down the hallway, a nurse laughed. The sound so out of place it felt like an offense. I'm sorry, Nora said. I should have done more. I should have gotten you better doctors, better care. Stop. Her mother's hand, frail and cold, closed over Nora's. You did everything. You've carried all of us. You've been more than I ever could have asked for. Nora sobbed quietly, forehead pressed to the blanket. Her mother struggled for breath. There's something I need to say. Nora looked up. Don't push him away, she whispered. He loves you. And he loves Ethan. I saw it. I felt it. Nora froze. You mean Tariq? Her mother nodded. He's not just a man from your past. He's part of your future. I knew it the moment I saw him hold Ethan's coat like it was precious. Nora covered her mouth, unable to contain the grief swelling in her chest. You deserve love, her mother whispered, not just duty. Silence. Then, with her final strength, she reached up, touched Nora's cheek, and said, I trust him with you. And then she let go. No final gasp, no dramatic goodbye, just a soft exhale, like a thread being released into wind. Nora didn't move for a long time. She sat by the bed, holding her mother's hand long after it grew still. The world outside kept turning. Nurses walking, monitors blinking, phones ringing. But inside her, something had broken wide open. And she was no longer the girl holding everything together. She was a daughter with no one left to call mom. The days that followed moved like shadows through water. There were forms to sign, calls to make, relatives to inform, none of them close, none of them present. Most had faded away when the burden grew too heavy. It had always been Nora and her mother and Ethan, and now it was just Nora and her son, except it wasn't. Because Tariq didn't leave. He showed up the next morning with black coffee and silence. He picked up Ethan from school, cooked dinner when Nora couldn't lift her head, sat on the floor with Ethan building model cities while the funeral arrangements were made. He didn't ask how she was. He didn't offer empty condolences. He simply stayed. One evening, as Nora stood in the kitchen, staring at nothing, Tariq came up behind her and gently touched her shoulder. You don't have to do this alone anymore, he said. She turned, tears running silently down her face, and collapsed into his arms. It wasn't passion. It wasn't desire. It was grief, meeting comfort. Two broken people holding each other upright in a moment where words had no meaning. The funeral was small. No choir, no elaborate ceremony, just a simple service in a modest chapel with soft music and handwritten letters from Ethan and Nora placed beside the urn. A photograph on the altar showed a younger, laughing version of her mother, vibrant and proud. Nora spoke only once. She wasn't perfect, but she taught me everything about loyalty, about sacrifice, about love without applause, and she deserved more than what life gave her. But I hope she saw, in the end, that I was okay, that Ethan is okay. Her voice cracked. That we'll be okay. Afterward, Tariq waited until the others had gone. He knelt beside the urn, silent, then whispered something in Arabic. A prayer, a promise, and when he stood, his face was changed, calmer, resolved. That night, Nora found him sitting in Ethan's room. The boy was fast asleep, one hand curled around a small 3D model of a solar house they'd built together. "You're good with him," she said softly from the doorway. Tariq looked at her. "He's easy to love," he said. Nora swallowed hard. "He's never had a father figure." "I'm not trying to replace anyone," Tariq said gently, "but if you'd let me, I'd like to be someone he can count on." Nora stepped into the room. "He already does." They stood there for a while in the hush of the evening, watching the boy they both loved sleep, unaware that everything around him was shifting, that a man who once ruled from skyscrapers was now learning what it meant to build something lasting, not from steel or glass, but from trust, from presence. From choosing to stay when leaving would be easier, and in the silence, Nora remembered her mother's last words. "I trust him with you." And for the first time, Nora did, too. But she didn't know that trust was about to be tested, not by the man beside her, but by the ghosts of the world he came from. And this time, it wouldn't be whispered threats or quiet dismissals. This time, tradition was coming face to face with the life they were trying to build, and it wouldn't leave quietly. The knock came early on a Thursday morning. Nora had just returned from the corner store with fresh bread and tea bags when she found Tariq standing outside her apartment building, not alone. Behind him stood a woman draped in midnight blue silk and quiet authority. Two men flanked her, both tall, clean-shaven, and unmistakably part of the same lineage. Posture regal, eyes sharp, movements measured. Nora's breath caught. Amina Al-Said in Brooklyn. Her presence made the entire street feel smaller. "May we come in?" Tariq asked softly, sensing the rising tension in Nora's chest. She nodded, swallowing hard. Of course, inside the apartment, the contrast was glaring. The simplicity of Nora's modest home photos taped to the fridge, a chipped mug on the counter. Ethan's schoolbook scattered on the table seemed almost fragile under the quiet scrutiny of the Al-Said family. Amina sat carefully on the couch, adjusting her headscarf with elegant precision. Her sons stood behind her like guards. Tariq remained by Nora's side. Nora, composed but trembling inside, poured tea into mismatched mugs. She offered one to Amina. The older woman accepted it with a nod, not warm, but not dismissive either. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, Amina spoke. "My son has made his position clear." Nora said nothing. "I did not raise him to follow whims, but I respect his conviction, and I do not travel across oceans without purpose." Nora met her gaze evenly. "And what purpose brings you here?" Amina's eyes did not blink. "To understand what kind of woman holds my son's loyalty so tightly." The words could have been cruel, but they weren't. They were calculated, testing. Nora didn't flinch. "I don't hold anyone," she said calmly. "If Tariq is here, it's because he chooses to be." The second son, Omar, shifted slightly, clearly unused to women who spoke with such quiet defiance. Amina took a long sip of tea. "And the boy?" she asked. Nora's spine straightened. "Ethan is my son. He's not asking for your name or your approval." Amina tilted her head. "But my son is offering both." Another silence. Tariq finally stepped forward. "Mother, I didn't bring you here to interrogate her." "I know," Amina said, her voice even, "but I cannot return to Abu Dhabi and pretend nothing has changed. My eldest son has broken with centuries of expectation. That does not go unnoticed." Nora stood now, hands steady. I'm not asking for your blessing, but I won't apologize for who I am. To everyone's surprise, including Tariq's, Amina smiled. It was faint, but real. You are strong. Nora didn't respond. Amina turned to Tariq. And the boy? I'm beginning the process to adopt him legally, Tariq replied. Amina's gaze returned to Nora. You would allow that? Nora's jaw tightened. Ethan deserves someone who stays. Tariq stays. Another silence. Then Amina stood. The room seemed to shift. If you are to be part of this family, she said slowly, then the world must see it. Not in shadows. Not in secrecy. Nora frowned. What do you mean? The older woman moved closer now. Her perfume was soft, rosewater and oud. Her presence was heavy, like a judgment cloaked in silk. If you are to marry, she said, you will do so in Dubai, in public, under our traditions. With honor, the word struck like a bell in the quiet room. Nora blinked. Marry. Tariq's voice came low. It's a condition. Nora looked at him, stunned. You knew. He nodded. She told me last night. I didn't want to pressure you. Amina added. This isn't about pressure. It's about legitimacy, protection, dignity. Nora looked at her, then at Tariq, then at the space around her. Small, lived, imperfect. And then she thought of Ethan, the boy who had asked once, in a whisper, do you think he could ever be my real dad? Nora's heart thundered. I need time, she said quietly. Amina nodded, unsurprised. Of course, but understand, the door does not stay open forever. Then, without another word, she left. The brothers followed. Only Tariq remained. He stepped close, taking her hands gently. You don't have to say yes, he said. Not for them, not for me. Nora looked at him, eyes glassy. But do you want me to? Yes, he whispered. I want to wake up with you every day. I want Ethan to know he's ours. I want the world to know you're the best decision I ever made. Her lips parted, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she nodded once, turned away, and whispered, I just need to breathe. That night, she sat on the rooftop of their building, wrapped in a blanket, eyes fixed on the New York skyline. Tariq joined her, sitting in silence. The wind was cold, their futures uncertain. But one thing was clear now. The story wasn't just about love anymore. It was about legacy. And the price of writing your own. The invitation wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be. One evening, just as the last rays of sunset melted across the skyline, Nora received a message from Tariq. Meet me at the rooftop. No context, no urgency, just a place and an unspoken promise. Nora tucked her phone away and climbed the familiar stairs, the cool concrete under her shoes reminding her how far this little building had carried her through years of exhaustion, resilience, and quiet survival. But tonight, her steps felt different, lighter. When she pushed the door open, the rooftop had changed. Strings of warm lights danced between the railings. A soft rug had been rolled out under the stars with low cushions, candles flickering gently at the corners. And Tariq was there, in dark slacks and a white open-collar shirt. Barefoot, standing beside a small table set for two. Nora froze. I didn't want this to be grand, he said. Just true. She took a breath and stepped forward, heart echoing in her chest. Tariq pulled out her seat, silent and intentional. They sat, ate slowly, their words light. School updates from Ethan, the final draft of her re-entry essay for architecture school. The city's winter coming sooner than expected, but underneath it all, something deeper pulsed, and as the sky darkened, Tariq leaned forward. Nora, he said gently, can I ask you something, without the weight of family or history or expectation? She nodded, already bracing herself. What would your life look like, he asked, if you weren't just surviving anymore? Her eyes welled immediately, not with fear, but with recognition. I don't know, she whispered. I've never had the luxury of asking that. You do now, he said. You have me. You have Ethan. You have a new chapter waiting. Not because I saved you, but because you never stopped saving yourself. Nora looked at him, lips trembling. I'm not used to people offering me things without taking something in return. I don't want anything from you, he said, except this. He stood, reached into his jacket, and pulled out a small box. Nora's breath caught. I didn't bring this from Dubai, he said, opening it. I had it made here. Simple, honest, new. Inside was a ring, a single diamond in a platinum band, shaped like a winding path with two lines merging into one. Nora Bennett, he said softly, will you marry me? The world stilled, and for the first time in a very long time, Nora didn't feel like she had to run. She stood slowly, looked him in the eyes, and nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and when their hands met, everything that had felt broken now felt chosen. But something else shifted that night, quietly inside her. In the days that followed, Nora saw the world with new eyes. Not as someone tolerated or endured, but as someone accepted, celebrated. She walked through Tariq's world business meetings, gala invites, property unveilings not as a tag-along, but as an equal. He never introduced her as his fiancée with pride in possession, but with awe in partnership. People noticed, whispers followed them, but Nora held her head high. And Ethan bloomed. He started calling Tariq Dad on his own, tentatively at first. Then with full confidence, the papers were filed, the name change request submitted, but more than legalities, what changed was the rhythm of their lives. Ethan and Tariq had routines now. Weekend bike rides, chess matches on Thursday nights, tech projects sprawled across the living room floor, and Nora went back to school. She walked into her first architecture class, trembling, the oldest student in the room, out of practice, out of place. But when she opened her notebook, something inside clicked. Designing wasn't about lines and measurements. It was about creating space where people felt safe, held, seen. Exactly what Tariq had given her. Exactly what she would now give to others. At night, when Tariq held her, one hand on her back, the other gently tangled in her hair, she no longer wondered why he loved her. She finally believed she was worth loving, but not everyone agreed. In the background, invitations were sent, plans unfolding in Dubai, a wedding whispered about among dignitaries and royals, a list of names, a stage being set, and within that stage waited a new set of challenges, because even as love blossomed, old powers watched, and not everyone was ready to accept a Brooklyn woman with calloused hands and a child from another man as part of the Al Said legacy. Still, Nora stood firm. She was no longer walking into their world as a guest. She was walking in as a bride, not because she belonged to Tariq, but because they belonged to each other and the world. It would either accept them or witness what happened when two people, once broken by tradition, chose to build something unbreakable. Dubai shimmered beneath the desert sun like a city carved from glass and gold. It was unlike anything Nora had ever seen. Skyscrapers that sliced through the sky like silver blades, fountains that danced to music, and silence that somehow still carried the weight of centuries. Everything in the city seemed to whisper of both tradition and ambition, history and future. And now, at the heart of it, she stood, bride, foreigner, mother, chosen. The wedding had taken months to prepare, but Amina Al Said had ensured that every detail reflected honor, not extravagance. This was not about flaunting wealth. It was about showing the world, and especially the Arab elite, that this union wasn't a scandal. It was destiny. The ceremony was held at the Al Said family palace, nestled behind ornate gates, and a long path lined with white jasmine trees and polished stone. The garden was transformed into a scene from a dream, rows of white silk chairs under elegant arches, lanterns hanging like stars, and a canopy of soft rose petals floating in shallow pools beside marble walkways. Nora stood behind an embroidered curtain, heart pounding in her chest. Her dress, hand-stitched in both New York and Dubai, was a fusion of cultures. The bodice was simple and elegant, with subtle floral embroidery across her chest and arms. Over it, a soft, sheer veil edged with gold traced the shape of her face and flowed down her back, held in place by a delicate tiara gifted by Amina herself. She had never imagined herself in such a dress, never dared to dream of this moment. But now it was real, and it wasn't about opulence. It was about respect, acceptance, love. Outside, guests had gathered. Royals from neighboring countries, business titans, American investors, and family from both continents. A translator whispered through earpieces as verses were spoken in Arabic and English. Traditions were honored, cultures met, and at the center of it all stood Tariq. In traditional attire, an immaculate bisht over a white kandura, he looked like a king, waiting not for a queen, but for a partner. Ethan stood beside him, wearing a matching white thobe, composed, the ring box clutched tightly in his small hands. The music changed. A hush swept across the garden, and the curtain was pulled aside. Nora stepped forward, and everything, every whisper, every glance, every doubt, fell silent. She walked down the aisle with her head held high, not to prove anything, but because she finally believed she belonged. Tariq's eyes never left hers. When she reached him, he whispered, "You're home." The vows were spoken in two tongues. In Arabic, for his ancestors. In English, for her soul. They exchanged rings under a canopy of jasmine and silk, and when Tariq placed the ring on her finger, he didn't say, "I promise." He said, "I choose you, again, every day." Nora's voice trembled as she replied, "And I choose the life we're building, the one we never thought we'd have." When they kissed, the applause came not in waves, but in something deeper, a collective exhale, because this wasn't just a wedding, it was a declaration that love, when real, makes room where the world draws lines. After the ceremony, the reception blended elegance with warmth. Western music followed traditional oud melodies. Gold platters carried Lebanese sweets, New York cheesecake, and Moroccan tea. Children danced beside dignitaries. Cultures clashed and then embraced. Amina stood at the head table. When it was her turn to speak, the garden stilled. She held her glass gently and said, "Many of you questioned this union." A pause. I did, too. Everyone waited. But today, I saw a woman who carries grace, a child who carries Tariq's heart, and a love that carried both of them through fire. Her voice softened. "Nora, you are now Al Sayed, not by blood, not by permission, but by strength." She raised her glass. "Welcome, my daughter." Nora blinked back tears as murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Later, under the stars, Ethan found Tariq by the reflecting pool. "Can I still call you Dad?" Tariq crouched beside him. "You don't have to ask anymore." They hugged, tight and silent. Nora watched from a distance, her heart so full it ached. As the night drew on, the couple slipped away from the lights, from the crowd, from the ceremony. They walked barefoot on cool tiles, hand in hand. "I still can't believe this is real," Nora whispered. Tariq smiled. "It's not the palace that makes it real. It's you." She leaned her head against his shoulder, eyes closed. For so long, she had believed love was a wound, a risk, a weakness. But now, in the heart of a culture she once feared would never accept her, she stood, not as an outsider, but as a bridge, a symbol, a wife, and soon, something more. But that, she hadn't told him yet. Not tonight. Some truths were meant to arrive with morning light. 1 year later, the skyline of New York shimmered beneath the amber glow of a spring sunset. From the rooftop of their new brownstone in Harlem, a restored project Tariq had once only dreamed of, Nora stood barefoot, a sleeping baby in her arms, her cheek resting softly against the warmth of her daughter's head. Her name was Lila, Arabic for night. But to Nora, she was something else, a symbol of healing, of hope, of everything they had rebuilt, not from wealth or legacy, but from choice. Inside, laughter echoed. Ethan and Tariq were in the kitchen, arguing playfully over who had burned the rice. Music played in the background, a soft playlist Nora had created for calm mornings, but that somehow always found its way into their nights. On the walls, framed sketches hung, some of Ethan's early coding designs, others of Nora's final architecture projects. And above the fireplace, one image, a simple black and white photo from their wedding, captured a moment of peace amidst a whirlwind year. Life wasn't easy, but it was theirs. Nora had returned to school full-time after the wedding, finishing her architecture degree with honors. She had taken a position in Tariq's firm, not as his wife, but as one of the lead minds on sustainable housing design. The first time she signed off on a project bearing her full name, Nora Bennett Al Sayed, she cried, not because of pride, but because she had finally earned her place in every room she walked into. Tariq, too, had changed. He no longer sought to prove anything to anyone, not to his mother, not to his board, not to his past. He had stepped down from several of the family's global ventures, and shifted his focus to what mattered most: building communities, raising Ethan, holding Layla as she slept on his chest, and reminding Nora every day that she was not a footnote in his empire, but the beginning of something new. Their love had deepened, not through perfect moments, but through ordinary ones. Midnight feedings, missed trains, silent arguments in crowded rooms, Sunday pancakes, rainy mornings, to forgotten anniversaries quickly redeemed with rooftop tea and handwritten notes. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was a partnership, built brick by brick, word by word, touch by touch. Ethan had grown, too. Now 14, he wore his name with pride. Ethan Allside. He had recently been accepted into a pre-college coding program and had dreams of developing educational apps for underserved communities. He still called Nora Mom with his usual blend of teenage sarcasm and affection, but when he said Dad, his voice always softened, even if just slightly. And Layla, she had Tariq's eyes, those golden brown eyes Nora had once fallen into as a girl, and now found again in the gaze of their daughter. Sometimes, late at night, when the baby finally slept and the house was still, Nora would lie beside Tariq and trace the lines of his face in the dark. "You know," she whispered once, "this all started because you ordered pizza." He laughed softly. "I should write them a thank you note." But Nora didn't laugh. She looked at him with quiet gravity. "No," she said, "you should write her a thank you note. The girl who opened that door and didn't run." Tariq reached for her hand. "I do every day." And in the silence that followed, they both knew this life wasn't perfect. It still carried shadows, ghosts, the weight of old wounds that sometimes reopened on tired days. But they had learned something powerful, that healing doesn't come in one moment. It comes in thousands of little ones. A hand held during a panic attack, a voice saying, "You're not alone." A child falling asleep between two people who thought love had abandoned them. And slowly, those moments add up to a life, to a family, to a future. That night, as the city hummed below and the stars blinked overhead, Nora whispered into Layla's ear, "You're the proof that love doesn't die. It just waits." Far away, in a quiet room in Abu Dhabi, Amina Al-Said watched a video message on her tablet. Layla's first steps, Ethan helping her wobble forward, while Nora cheered in the background. The older woman didn't smile, but she didn't turn it off either. Instead, she placed a hand over her chest and whispered, "May you be stronger than we were." Back on the rooftop, Tariq joined Nora, wrapping his arms around her from behind. They stood there, the three of them, with the memory of everything they'd endured, staring at the horizon. And in that quiet, golden moment, there were no titles, no scandals, no past, just a man, a woman, a child asleep in her arms, and a tomorrow they would meet together. Some stories don't begin in castles or candlelight. Sometimes they start with a heartbreak that never healed, a child raised in silence, and a knock on the door that changes everything. He was born into power. She was forced into survival. But love made them equals. They didn't get back the years they lost, but they built something stronger. Truth, trust, and a future neither of them thought they deserved. And in the end, it wasn't the wealth, the palace, or the family name that mattered. It was the quiet moments. The child calling him Dad, the way she smiled again, the life they chose together.